Okay? So again, kaya napalong akong laptop. Tugi, kaya ako nakita ang charger. Do you have questions? Murag nato yung nag-ask ko question, kaya lang since na-out ko, I cannot see the question here anymore. Murag nato yung nag-chat before napalong ang ako ang laptop. Can you send your question again? Para matubag nato na. So again we ended here sa note that all three quantities, the atomic number, the number of neutrons, and even the mass numbers must be positive integers or whole numbers. Dapat naka-whole number yan sila, and they are all positive integers. So, ang naa sa inyong periodic table, kailangan ninyo na siya i-round off. Again, kailangan ninyo siya i-round off to the nearest whole number so that you can get a whole number here also for the computation of the neutrons. Yes, Hazel?
Ma'am, ang boron kanina good ma'am, example mo sa boron kay di ba 12 sa akin good ma'am 10.811. So pag mag-round off ako ma'am 11 lang siya.
Okay, let us check with the periodic table. Wait. I have a periodic table here. I don't have a periodic table actually here. So let's look at sa internet. Na ba? Boron. Yeah, this is supposedly 11. This one is a typographical error. Wait lang. Let us check this. Ayan. So this should be 11. And thus, this is 6. Okay, thank you for that correction.
Thank you ma'am. Nalibog sad ko kay basig mali ako ang table.
No. That is actually correct. So, ayan, correctionan ko na siya. Oops. Nangyari. Ayan. So, okay. So, this is being corrected. We have 11 na atomic mass for boron and 5 na atomic number. So, all in all, when we compute the number of neutrons, this is 6. So, the nearest whole number since it is 10.811 in the periodic table, we'll round it off to 11. So I hope that is clear now. Okay? Any more questions about the atomic number, the mass number, and even the number of subatomic particles? Wala na? So let's move on to isotopes. So this one is a new topic since hindi siya included in the laboratory. So pag sinabing isotopes class, they are atoms that have the same atomic number. Again, number 1 characteristic sa isotopes, they have the same atomic number. So what is different sa isotopes? They have different mass numbers. So we can infer from this na pag same atomic number, meaning they have the same number of protons. And a while ago, I told you na pag the same ang number of protons, it means the same element yan. Kasi pag sinabi mong isa ang kanyang proton, automatic hydrogen. Pag dalawa, helium. Pag tatlo, lithium. So same atomic number means they have the same number of protons and thus they are the same element. So ang ibig sabihin nito class, when you say isotopes, they are the same element but they have different mass numbers. Again, they have different mass numbers. So let's have an example para masabtan ninyo what isotopes. Minsan ni siyang isotopes na ginatawag. So number 1, we have here hydrogen. Hydrogen actually has 3 isotopes. So the first isotope ni hydrogen is simply hydrogen, yung tinatawag nating hydrogen na kung titingnan ninyo sa periodic table, meron siyang 1 na atomic number and 1 din ang kanyang atomic mass. So again, check your periodic table there. Look at hydrogen, the first element. Ang atomic number niya ay 1, ang atomic mass niya ay 1 din. That is the first isotope of hydrogen and we just simply call it as hydrogen. But actually others will call it as protium. Now, again, hydrogen has 3 isotopes. So the second one is called the deuterium. Again, that's the name, deuterium. And what's the difference now between deuterium and the simple hydrogen? Deuterium class, ang kanyang atomic number is still 1 kasi remember, hindi naman nagbabago ang number of protons. So the same element. But the difference is the mass number because deuterium has a mass number of 2. Okay? So look at the difference. Actually, you can see that also here sa illustration. Ayan, deuterium. That is why they also call deuterium as the heavy hydrogen. And yes, they exist. Example, the heavy hydrogen is found sa dagat, sa mga dagat na to, especially dito sa pinakalalom na part sa atoang ocean, or sa tuwang body of waters, you can see heavy hydrogen or deuterium there. But if you ask, can we drink water? Diba, this one hydrogen is used to make water, the H2O. So how about if mag-combine si heavy hydrogen with oxygen and form water? So that is also possible. We call it D2O. That is also known as the heavy water because instead of H na hydrogen, oxygen here combines with the deuterium or the heavy hydrogen. So again, can we drink the heavy water? Yes, in small amount, pwede natin mainom ang heavy water, but in large quantities na class, it can be toxic already in the body. But anyway, makita lang naman natin siya sa like deep levels sa mga ocean na, sa ocean na. And then we have the last one, the tritium. This is still hydrogen because the atomic number is still 1, meaning isa lang gihapon ang iyahang proton. But this time, the mass number is 3. Okay, the mass number is 3. And we call tritium as the radioactive hydrogen, meaning it emits radiation. So tritium class is actually a product of processes involving nuclear activities like making the nuclear bombs. Ano na siya, dinha na siya ma-produce si tritium or the radioactive hydrogen. So again, they are all the same element because they have the same atomic number, but they have different mass number. So the reason why they have different mass numbers is they have different number of neutrons. So remember, if we check the number of subatomic particles for the first one, the hydrogen, they don't have charges. So this is 1 here, automatic 1. Thus the electron is also 1. But the neutrons, how do we compute neutrons? This is atomic mass minus the atomic number. So this is 0, 1 minus 1. Now, for the deuterium, we have protons, still 1 here, electrons. Sa electron, 1 lang gihapon. And sa neutron, this is 2 minus 1. So, deuterium class has 1 neutron here. So, that is why 2 ang kanyang mass number. And lastly, we have protons, 1 pa rin, electrons, still 1, and for the neutrons, para sa tritium or the radioactive hydrogen, this is 2 here. So that is now the difference. They are all hydrogen. They have the same atomic number, the same number of protons, but they have different mass numbers because they have different number of neutrons. And yes, they exist here sa Earth. Silang tanan nag-exist na sila. Lahi-lahi lang sila og gamit, lahi-lahi pud sila og origin. So the most abundant isotope of hydrogen is syempre si hydrogen or the protium. So yan yung maraming hydrogen natin ginagamit to make water. The rest, the heavy hydrogen, yes, we can still see that in our bodies of water, but we don't drink that in large quantities. And especially ang tritium class, we don't drink water that is made up of tritium because this is radioactive. Naga-emit siya ng radiation. So questions about isotopes? Alin dito ang hindi naintindihan sa isotopes class? That's the example, the hydrogen. The same element, different mass number. Okay, walay pangutana. So let's move on. We have now the periodic table. So you have your own periodic table there. You are allowed to use that one in our quizzes and even in our exam. But pinasimplify ko lang siya. That is why pinagawa siya sa laboratory ninyo. Kasi the original one, daghan actually information nga makita dito. And daghan po na number. Aside from atomic number and the atomic mass, you can also see the electronegativities of each element. So masyado nang maraming information if we will use the original periodic table. So ang kailangan lang naman natin for our lessons will be the symbol of the element, the name of the element, and their atomic mass and atomic numbers. So yun lang. But nevertheless, you know that periodic table class is our table listing all the elements that are already discovered and confirmed. So in the laboratory, we learned that we have 118 na elements already na confirmed, and we have also discussed the history. So let's have a review. Sino yung pinakaunang gumawa ng periodic table class? If you can still remember our lesson sa lab. Again, sino yung what was your answer, Jamal?
Si Anthony Lavoisier po, ma'am.
Okay, Lavoisier or Lavoisier. I actually cannot really pronounce his name, si Antoine. So siya ang pinakauna. But among sa mga names sa history who made the periodic table, who arranged the periodic table according to the atomic number. So how about naman, gumawa siya ng sarili niyang atomic number and he arranged that according to increasing atomic number. Sino yun? Sino nga yun?
Si John Newlands, ma'am.
Another person. John Newlands made the law of octaves. So siya tong nag-arrange sa elements by 8. So 8 kabuok nga element per group. Si John Newlands na siya. How about katong sa increasing na atomic number? Katong pinaka-last na name dito, it was Henry Moseley. So, may magkalimutan na kay appeal na siya sa tuang exam. So, si Henry Moseley class arranged the periodic table according to increasing atomic mass. So, si John Newlands, law of octaves, the law of triads was Johann Dobereiner. Okay? So, this is how the periodic table looks like. We have horizontal row. Ang ibig sabihin ng horizontal, pahiga ha. So, we have here 1, 2, hanggang 7. Oni siya diri class ang atuang period. So, pag sinabing period number 1 in the periodic table, dalawang elements lang yan. The hydrogen and the helium. That's the period, horizontal. Period number 2, we have more elements here. We have the lithium, the beryllium, boron, and so on. That's the period. But when you say vertical, That is class the groups or the families. We call it groups or families in the periodic table. Patayo naman siya. So pag sinabing group 1 or group 1A in the periodic table, that starts with hydrogen. So hydrogen pababa, hydrogen, lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, cesium, and francium. So the elements are grouped together according to their arrangement in the periodic table, whether class horizontal or vertical. So ang inyong tandaan lang, pag horizontal, period. Pag vertical, groups or families. And these elements that are being grouped together actually share some characteristics. So they share some characteristics like when they belong to, the same period, anong characteristic ang sinishare nila? They have the same number of energy shell. Pag sinabing energy shell, ito yung kung saan natin makikita si electron. So, ano ibig sabihin yan? Example, period number 1, we only have 2 elements, the hydrogen and the helium. So, these two have the same number of energy shell. And since they belong to group 1, it means they have 1 energy shell. Meaning yan, klase hydrogen, if this is the nucleus, surrounding the nucleus is only 1 energy shell. And that is true also for helium. Kay parehas man na sila nga naa sa period number 1. After the nucleus, si helium naa lang pud siya isa ka energy shell. And then as you go down with the period class, example sa period number 2, 2 energy shell na din yan. So lahat ng elements class na nasa period number 2, the same ang kanilang energy shell, and that is 2. So for example, si lithium, since nasa period number 2 siya, after the nucleus, may 2 energy shell siya. That is also true for beryllium. Since beryllium also is found sa period number 2, meron din siyang 2 energy shells surrounding its nucleus. So the biggest elements class or the biggest atoms belong to period number 7. Bakit? Kasi after their nucleus, they have 7 energy shell. So yun yung ibig sabihin class ng period. So it's amazing how they were able to find this or to discover this, that when they arrange the periodic table according to increasing atomic number, the elements grouped together horizontally share the same number of energy shell. So yun yung ibig sabihin class ng period. Now, paano naman yung vertical na arrangement? So gaya nito, you have the group 1A, the group 2A, that's from hydrogen to francium. For group 2A, we have bemag caserbara hanggang radium, from beryllium to radium. Ano naman yung sinishare nila na the same characteristics? So for groups or families, in a group class, they have the same valence electrons. Again, they have the same valence electrons. Ano nga ibig sabihin ng valence electrons? Anyone who knows what valence electrons are? Wala? Anong ibig sabihin ng valence? Let's write it here sa baba. I hope you can still see it. Walang idea ano ang ibig sabihin ng valence electrons? Nung high school kayo, hindi ba tinuro? Or motto ninyo sa life kay past is past. So nakalimtan na. Wala nakahinumdum. So pag, yes, who was that?
Number of electrons po.
Okay, sige. Valence electrons, we have here the electrons found in the outermost shell. Okay? Again, when you say valence, oh, very good, Anne. When you say valence electrons, they are electrons found in the outermost shell. When you say outermost shell, pinakalas na shell, di ba? For example, itong period number 7 natin, si francium, ilan lahat? 7 lahat ang kanilang energy shell. So pag sinabing outermost shell, yung pinakalas na shell, meaning the 7th shell in case of francium, kaya nasa period number 7 naman siya. So wait lang, let me erase kay para di ta maglibog. Ayan. So, pag sinabing group or families, silang lahat class, they have the same electrons. Kagaya ng group 1A, from hydrogen to francium. Group ha, we are talking about the group. Hydrogen, lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, cesium, francium. Ang the same sa kanila class, they have the same valence electron and that is 1. Kaya nga nasa group 1 sila. Meaning yan, si hydrogen class, syempre isa lang ang shell niya, so naalang na siya isa ka-electron. Si lithium, dalawa ang shell niya, pero sa pinakalas na shell, meron siyang isang electron. That is also true for sodium. Si sodium nasa period 3, so meaning na siya'y 3 ka energy shell. Pero, what is common? Sa outermost shell, sa pinakalas na shell, sodium also has 1 electron. So yan yung sinasabi ko na yung mga groups natin or families sa periodic table, ang similarity nila, they have the same number of electrons found in their outermost shell, or we call that valence electrons. So I hope nasabtan ninyo to unsa ang gina-represent ni period, unsa ang gina-represent ni groups or families. So i-summarize nato, period, kung anong period sila na belong sa periodic table, that will dictate how many energy shells yung nasa isang atom. Pero pag ang group or families yung pinidiscuss natin, this represents the number of valence electrons. Okay, so yan yung gamit nila. If you're asked how many periods do we have in the periodic table, 7 lang yan siya class. From hydrogen to francium, 7 lang. So this one is not counted because take note of the arrow. Naka-arrow yan siya, meaning si actinide and si lanthanide series, kasali yan siya. This is period 6 and this is period number 7. So again, 7 lang pa rin plus ang periods natin sa periodic table. But for groups and families, we have 2 types of families, the family A and the family B. So nakikita nyo naman yan sa screen. Ito, group 1A, group 2A, and then jump tayo 3A hanggang 8A. So they are called the representative elements. While at the center, you can see the family B or the group B's in a periodic table. And they are called the transition elements. So marami tayo class. All in all, we have 16 families or groups in the periodic table, classified into family A and family B. So again, 118 lahat ang discovered natin na elements in the periodic table. Now, aside from classifying our elements using the periods and the groups, we also classify our elements as to whether they are metal, non-metal, or metalloid. So especially in the naming, no, sa naming, kailangan natin malaman whether the component elements are metal or the non-metal. Kaya iba-iba yung naming nila. So in the screen class, you have there your reference. Alin ba talaga yung mga metals, the non-metals, and the metalloids. The green ones, and yan yung pinakamarami natin in the periodic table. These are the metals. Okay, yung mga naka-green, these are all the metals. So please take note of that also para sa naming natin, you will be guided. So pag sinabing metals class, ang pinaka-characteristic talaga ni metal is nagkakandak sila ng heat and electricity. Again, metals conduct heat and electricity that even some of them are used as wire para doon sa ating mga sa electricity, no, like sa copper, ginagamit natin siya to make wire to conduct electricity. Now, how about the non-metals? The blue ones class in the screen are our non-metals, and they are actually non-conductors of electricity and heat. So the blue ones including hydrogen, and then we have carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and then our halogen, and syempre our noble gases. They are all non-metals. And the pink ones from boron, silicon, germanium, arsenic, antimony, tellurium, polonium, astatine, they are all called metalloids or semi-metals. So you can use either metalloids or semi-metals ha. Their characteristic na sila characteristic na pareho sa metal. They also have characteristics that are the same with the non-metals, but we cannot classify them as metals or the non-metals. So giisa nato sila. In between, we have the metalloids or the semi-metals. Okay? Now, this is the distribution of elements on Earth and in living systems. The one that you can see on the screen are the essential elements in the human body. So what are the elements that we need for us, for our cells, for our organs to function well? Syempre, the element na kailangan natin pinakadaghan sa atuang lawas class kay si oxygen. And then nakapasunod na siya carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and so on. So we also need other elements. Dili lang oxygen ha, we even need fluorine, we even need selenium or even the iodine. Kailangan natin yan siya in the body but in small quantities only. But my question is, how about sa Earth? Ano yung element na pinakamarami talaga sa Earth? The most abundant element sa Earth. Ano kaya yun?
Oxygen, ma'am.
Oxygen? Any more answers? Let's see.
Nitrogen, ma'am. Ay,
Hydrogen, ma'am.
Hydrogen, nitrogen. So ano ba?
Helium.
Iron po.
Iron. Pinakamarami na
Carbon po.
Carbon.
Iron, ma'am.
The correct answer, class, ang pinakamaraming element sa buong Earth ha, sa whole Earth is carbon. That's the number one. Okay? Number one. Is carbon metal or non-metal? Metal or non-metal? Non-metal.
Non-metal po, ma'am.
Okay, non-metal. Therefore, class, ang pinakamarami na element sa Earth is a non-metal, and that is carbon. Now, my second question is, what do you think is the second most abundant element sa Earth? Second, the pinakamarami.
Hydrogen, ma'am. Hydrogen, ma'am.
Hydrogen. Any more answers?
Iron po, ma'am.
Iron.
Silicon, ma'am.
Okay, dyan dito, silicon. That's the second one, silicon. So, carbon tapos si silicon ha, ang ikaduha. Most abundant sa tibok kalibutan. Now, ano sa man ang silicon? Metal, non-metal, metalloid?
Metalloids po.
Okay, metalloid. So, this one. Non-metal ang pinakadaghan, ang ikaduha metalloid. So, unsay ikatatlo? Let's just discuss three.
Oxygen, ma'am.
Oxygen.
Iron.
Iron. Okay, very good. This is aluminum. So the third one, class, is aluminum. And you know that aluminum is a metal. So yan yung pagpasunod, class ha, ng abundance when it comes to the abundance sa Earth ng ating mga elements. Pinakamarami si carbon, next si silicon, and si aluminum. So if you are asked now, unsa ang pinakadaghan nga metal sa Earth? Syempre, si aluminum to siya. Kay the other two are non-metal and the metalloid. Nagsugod ta sa metal, diri kay aluminum. Pinakamaraming non-metal, carbon. Pinakamaraming metalloid, silicon. And pinakamaraming metal, it's the aluminum. Okay? Pero pag ang question is pinakamaraming na element, it's carbon. I hope that is clear. Ayan. But in our body, ang pinakamarami, oxygen. Because our body, our organs, even our cells need oxygen for respiration and for all their other functions. Oxygen yan siya sa human body. Okay? So again, elements are referred to the periodic table according to their group numbers. And yung group numbers na yan, class, may pangalan yan sila. So mostly the group A or the family A, may pangalan yan sila. So group 1A again is called the alkali metals. They are all metals except for hydrogen. Okay? Lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, cesium, and francium. They belong to group 1A in the periodic table and they are collectively known as the alkali metals. The group 2A are called the alkaline earth metals. So, from beryllium to radium, metals pa rin sila. They're called alkali or alkaline because when they react with water, class, they form or they produce alkaline or basic na substance. So, dili acidic ha, basic na substance when they react with water. So that is why they are called either alkaline metals or alkaline earth metals. Now let's jump to group 3A. They are called the boron group. The 4A, they are called the carbon group. The 5A, they are called the nitrogen group. And then the 6A, we call them the chalcogens. So si 6A, di ba, starting from oxygen, pababa, we call them, class, the chalcogens. And then the 7A, we call them the halogens. So from fluorine, chlorine, bromine, iodine, astatine, sila tanan ang tawag nato halogens. And except for astatine, they are all non-metals. Okay? Mag-ask kayo ng question if wala kayong naintindihan dyan, ha? And then 8A class, we call them our noble gases. So we have helium, argon, neon, krypton, xenon, and even radon or radon. They are noble gases or rare gases. So we call them noble because they don't react with other elements. They are stable. They have completed the octet rule, so they don't need other elements. They don't form compounds. So mostly the family A or the group A, yan yung may mga pangalan. Yung family B natin na nasa gitna, we collectively call them as our transition metals. Transition metals yan sila. They are all metals. But yung nasa baba, metals pa rin, yung ganito sa baba, class, the actinide and the lanthanide series, they are all metals gihapon. But they are rare earth metals, so we seldom see them. Some of them are even man-made. So ang uban sa ilaha kay man-made na. Ano nasa baba? Mga actinide and lanthanide series. Okay? So we have next, let's talk about molecules. Atoms, class, ang atuang basic unit of matter. So how about the molecules? Ano ba ibig sabihin ng molecules? Kasi sometimes ginagamit natin hydrogen atom, sometimes hydrogen molecules. So ano yung pinagkaiba nila? Atom, basic unit ni matter. Pero pag molecules, that is actually combination of two or more atoms. So pag ang dalawang atom or even more than two atoms mag-combine, that's the time we call it a molecule. So a molecule again is an aggregate of at least two atoms in a definite arrangement and they are held together by a chemical force, and that force is called the chemical bond. So chemical bond ang tawag natin dyan ha. So pag ang atom of an element combine with another atom, that's the time we call it now a molecule. So pag isang atom lang talaga ang tawag natin. Pero pag nag-combine na sila, that's the time gamitin natin yung word na molecule. Now yung combination na nila, meron yan silang force here that hold two atoms together. The force is called the chemical bond. So I hope klaro na siya sa inyo ha. Now we have two types of molecules, the monoatomic molecule and the diatomic molecule. So let's start here with the monoatomic molecule. These are molecules containing more than two atoms. Again, pag monoatomic molecules, they contain more than two atoms. Let's have an example. Itong monoatomic molecules, pwede siyang the same kind of atom or the same element, pero more than two, kagaya ng ozone. So like the ozone layer natin. Monoatomic molecule yan siya kasi ozone's chemical formula is O3. So the same element siya, oxygen lang talaga, pero tatlong atom ng oxygen. Kaya under siya sa monoatomic molecules. So again ha, pag more than two atoms na ang nag-combine, monoatomic molecule na yan siya. Pwede din siya class na different elements or different kinds of atoms. So kagaya ng example dito, water. So all in all class, meron tayong dalawang atom ni hydrogen and isang atom ni oxygen. Meron tayong tatlong atoms dito. So that is now more than two atoms. Pero different elements. Kaya lang ang description kasi ng monoatomic, whether the same element or different element, as long as more than two atoms ang nag-combine, matik yan siya under sa monoatomic molecule. So I hope klaro na siya na unsay meaning anang monoatomic molecules. And then let's move on sa atuang second one, the diatomic molecules class or diatomic molecule. This time, ang mono kasi hindi yan siya nagsunod. Ang ibig sabihin ng mono, di ba, one, pero hindi yan siya nagsunod dito kasi more than two atoms talaga. Si diatomic, nagsunod talaga siya sa meaning niya. Di means two. So meaning ng diatomic molecules, these are molecules containing only two atoms. Dalawang atoms lang talaga ang nag-combine. So pwedeng same element like nitrogen and then oxygen. Meron nga tayong tinatawag na diatomic molecules na mga elements. Hindi ito lahat ng elements ha. Meron lang tayong mnemonics na ginagamit. The Birchnow. I don't know if you are familiar with this. These are the bromine, iodine, chlorine, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, and fluorine. So these elements class do not exist sa nature nga isang atom lang. Always yan siya na tigda-dalawa. That is why kung makikita niyo sila sa chemical reaction, meron silang 2 sa baba. Ayan, kasi diatomic sila na molecule. Always sila naka-combine with other atom na same element. Okay? So again, diatomic molecules lang. Yan sila. Pero pwede din naman kasing diatomic molecules na different elements. As long as dalawa lang talagang atom. Like hydrogen chloride or hydrochloric acid, that is HCl. So dalawa lang, hydrogen and chlorine, or carbon monoxide, carbon and oxygen. So pag dalawa, we call it diatomic molecule. Okay? Questions so far? Nagkasinabot ba ta sa atong mga molecules? Walay pangutana. Okay. Sige. Now, after the molecules, let's talk about ions. Now, the ions class are atoms or elements that have charges, either positive or negative. Again, pag ang element magkaroon ng charge, we call it now ion or ions. So again, pwede siya positive, pwede siya negative. So this one, the T here in the cation will give you a hint na the cations are the positively charged ions. And automatically, the anions are the negatively charged. Okay? So this is how we classify our ions, either cation or anion. But actually, we can also classify ions as monoatomic ions or polyatomic ions. Pag sinabing monoatomic class, syempre, mono means one, it only contains one atom. Kagaya ng sodium. Sodium ion, isang atom lang yan. Examples there, magnesium ion. Though positive to ang charge niya, pero isang atom lang din, magnesium lang siya. Or iron. Iron can be Fe positive 3. So isang atom, pero naa siya charge. We call it monoatomic ion. And then lastly, you know this, especially sa naming nato, no, sa laboratory, we have the so-called polyatomic ions. So poly means marami, meaning more than one atom ang makikita natin sa combination na ito. And then ang pinaka-importante class, meron silang charges. So just like OH negative, we call this our hydroxide ion. Or the CN negative, meron siyang dalawang atom, kaya polyatomic ion siya. So this is called the cyanide. Okay, very good. Cyanide. We call this the cyanide. That's how we classify our ions. Pag positively charged, cation. Pag negatively charged, anion. Pag isang atom lang, monoatomic.
Monoatomic.
Okay, pag marami, we have the
Polyatomic.
polyatomic ions. Okay, very good. So now let's move on. We have here examples of monoatomic ions that you can see in the periodic table. Examples lang ito like lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, magnesium. Our metals class, by the way, our metals are positively charged. So atong mga metals are cations. So as you can see, na sila sa green ones, no? Na sila sa green one. And then, di ba, ang ato ang palatandaan ani, ang nasa green mo na atong mga metals. Pero naay mga metals class na dalawa ang kanilang charges. So na-learn nato na siya sa lab sa ato ang naming. So parehas ani, chromium, manganese, iron, cobalt, nickel, copper, the mercury, the gold, and even the tin and the lead, they are all metals na dalawa yung charge. So pwede po ninyo siya gamiton class as reference, especially doon sa naming and paggawa ng chemical formula para guided kayo. Kasi di ba kailangan isulat, kung sa naming kailangan isulat inside the open and closed parenthesis kung ano yung charge nila. So pwede niyo to gawing guide. And take note class, our non-metals are anions. Itong mga nasa blue, except for hydrogen though, itong mga nasa blue are negatively charged and they are all anions or non-metals. Non-metals sila. So that's how you know that. Okay? So next, we have the so-called chemical formulas. So ito yung pinagawa sa inyo sa activity number 4 na binigay ang names and then ginawa nyo yung chemical formulas. So when you say chemical formulas, they express the composition of molecules and ionic compounds in terms of chemical symbols. So we are using here the symbols of the elements to make the chemical formulas. Now, meron tayong dalawang klase na chemical formula. Number one, we call it molecular formula, and then the second one is called empirical formula. Ang tandaan nyo lang, class, para mas madali atong life, pag sinabing molecular formula, this is the true formula of our chemical substance. Bakit true chemical formula siya? Kasi it will give you the exact number of each atoms or each element that you can found in the chemical substance. Like pag sinabi nating water, you will really see that water has 2 hydrogen and then isang oxygen. That's the true molecular formula. Or example, hydrogen peroxide. You will really see sa molecular formula ng hydrogen peroxide na it contains 2 hydrogen and also 2 oxygen. Kaya tinawag siyang true formula. Exact talaga ang number of the atoms. Now, how about the empirical formula? The empirical formula is the simplified formula. Simplified formula. Diba sa inyuhang mathematics, especially sa fraction, usahay gina-ask mo to reduce the fraction to lowest term or to simplify the fraction to lowest term. Ana pud ang empirical formula, class. This will just tell us which elements or elements are present in the formula, pero this will not give us the exact number of atoms kasi pinasimplify siya. Meaning, gireduce siya sa lowest term. Example, for H2O, we cannot reduce H2O. So the empirical formula of H2O is still H2O. So, dili kayo na ito makita no, ang difference ni molecular ug ni empirical formula din ha. Pero, for the hydrogen peroxide, there is a difference between the molecular formula and the empirical formula. Kaya di ba sa fraction class, pag mag-reduce mo, you will get the common factor nila. So like this one, H2 and O2, the common factor is syempre 2. So di ba pag mag-reduce mo, kung i-divide na to na sa 2, 2 divided by 2 is 1. So for hydrogen peroxide, you will have H there. And then for oxygen, 2 divided by 2 is still 1. So this is now the empirical formula of our hydrogen peroxide. So I hope nasabtan ninyo nga pag empirical formula, gina-reduce siya to lowest term. Thus, gina-simplify siya. It will not give us the exact number of atoms, but it will give us what element or elements are present. Sa molecular formula, this will give us the element present at the same time the exact number of atoms. Thus, it is called the true formula. So, another example, we have example this one, C6H6. This is the example, the benzene. So C6H6 ang molecular formula niya. Pinapakita talaga dito na kailangan ng 6 na carbon and 6 na hydrogen para mabuo ang benzene. Pero pag ano kasi siya class, i-simplify siya. So syempre what is the common factor between 6 and 6? Syempre 6. So ang kanyang chemical formula will just be C and H. Pinasimplify. Pinakita lang anong elements ang meron dyan sa benzene na yan. Okay? Or example, another formula, C4H6. That is the molecular formula, the true formula. Kailangan ng 4 na, this one is called pentane. Okay, pentane. No. Wait, let me delete this one. This is called butane. Sorry. Let me correct this. This is what you call butane. So kanang butane nga atong ginagamit magluto, that is C4H6. Now, that is the molecular formula of butane. True formula, it will show you that it has 4 carbons and 6 hydrogen. Pero, pag i-simplify natin ito, what is the common factor sa 4 and sa 6?
2 po.
2. Okay. So, 2. Pag i-reduce natin ito, class, 4 divided by 2 is 2. Syempre, this is C2 now. And 6 divided by 2 is 3. So, this is now the simplified and the empirical formula of butane. That's the difference between the molecular and the empirical formula. So, again, ang true formula has si molecular formula. Next, we have here the molecular model. So yung ginagawa ko class na nilalagay ko lang like water H2O, ammonia NH3, methane CH4, hydrogen is H2. Ang tawag natin dyan, molecular formula. That's the true formula of our chemical substances. Pero pag nilagay ko na siya, dinraw ko na siya, like this one, nilagyan ko siya ng bonding in between. Pinakita ko yung bonding niya. Ang tawag dyan, class, structural formula. Okay? Ito kasi nililist lang yung element and ilan ang number of atoms. Pero pag structural formula na, we will really see the bondings between the elements. Now, meron din tayong tinatawag na ball and stick. I don't know if you have experienced making this one in your high school days na pinapagawa kayo ng mga balls and then nilalagyan ng stick in between. So, ang tawag dyan, ball and stick model. And then ito naman, kapag you cannot really see the bondings in between, instead, the combination of the different atoms, ito yung tinatawag natin na space filling models. Mga molecular models lang yan siya to show you the chemical formula of our substances. So pag structural formula class, yung molecular formula, true formula ha, sa structural formula, this will show us how atoms are bonded to one another. So in the case of water, this is the molecular formula. Pag pinakita natin yung kanyang structural formula, we will see na we will have oxygen in between and ibaband natin yung dalawang hydrogen. So again, ang pinapakita for structural formula, how atoms are bonded to one another. Now sa ball and stick, naman na model, this will show us the three-dimensional arrangement ng ating atoms. Okay? 3 dimension kasi we have like this, the ball, and then you have the hydrogen here bonded with the oxygen in between. So 3-dimensional siya. Now what's the problem with our ball and stick? The balls are not proportionate to the size of the atom. So sometimes pwede kang gumamit ng maliit lang na ball to represent the oxygen and another small na mga balls for the hydrogen. So hindi siya proportionate to the real size of the atoms. And at the same time, the sticks na ginagamit natin to connect these balls greatly exaggerate the space between atoms. So usahay manggutaas kay itong stick na ginagamit. So dili po di nga nakadako class ang space between our atoms. So ang pinaka-accurate na models among the three is the space filling models. Bakit? Kasi this will show us the variation in the atomic size. Iba-iba kasi ang size ng ating atoms class. And remember, ang sabi ko sa inyo, as you go down the period from 1 to 7, lumalaki yung atoms because of the energy shells nila. So, syempre kung nasa period 1 siya, isang energy shell lang. And if we represent the model for our chemical substance, kailangan kasi natin mapakita na the size of the oxygen is different to the size of our hydrogen. So, kagaya nito. So makikita natin ang difference. Syempre for hydrogen, since the same atom yan sila, the same ang size. So for water, itong red, that will represent the oxygen, and itong nasa gilid, yan yung magre-represent ng hydrogen. Oxygen ang nasa gitna. So it will show us the variation in the sizes of our atoms. That's how we represent, that's our molecular models. So again, empirical formulas are our simplest chemical formula. Nire-reduce natin yung subscript, hinahanapan natin ng common factor. And ang ating true formula, ang ating molecular formula, because it will show us the correct and the exact number of atoms. So, class, if we know the molecular formula of our substance, we can also know the empirical formula, pero not the other way around. If kabaluta sa empirical formula, we cannot actually know the molecular formula kasi reduced formula si empirical. Okay? So for the formula of our ionic compounds, naituro ito sa laboratory, 'di ba? Pag gumagawa tayo ng formula, first kailangan natin i-write ang symbols, tapos i-identify natin, 'di ba, ang charges. Tapos 'di ba pag i-add natin, pag the sum is equal to 0, then we just combine the two symbols. So i-combine natin ang two symbols. But if the sum is equal, baliktad. wait. Baliktad din siya. So again, if the sum is equal to 0, you just combine. Pero if the sum is not equal to 0, that's the time we do the criss-cross. That's for the formula. Parehas aning potassium bromide. The first thing to do is to write their symbols, potassium and then bromide. Tapos the next thing is to identify their charges. The charges is, 'di ba, ang tinuro ko sa inyo doon sa laboratory kung ano yung position nila sa periodic table, anong group sila sa periodic table, yun din yung magiging charge nila. So potassium belongs to group 1A, so this is positive 1 here. And bromine is found in 7A, so ang charge niya ay negative 1. So pag i-add natin sila, positive 1 plus negative 1, this is equal to 0. So for the chemical formula, i-combine lang natin the K and the Br. So this is now the correct formula of potassium bromide. Now another example, aluminum oxide. Aluminum is Al, oxide is O. Kasi oxygen yan siya. Change lang ang ending into IDE. And then, aluminum in the periodic table nasa group 3. So that is positive 3. And oxygen is negative 2. So pag i-add natin, positive 3 plus negative 2, this is equal to positive 1. So hindi siya 0. That's the time we have to do the criss-cross. So aluminum will take the 2 here, gagawin siyang subscript, and oxygen will take the 3. Again, gagawin pa rin siyang subscript. That's how we make the chemical formula. So I think that ends our discussion. Ang ibang chemical formula will be supplemented in the laboratory. So, ang group 1, I'll be teaching you again later how to make the chemical formula, and group 2, you will have Ma'am Charm to teach you how to make the chemical formula of our chemical substances. So for the meantime, any question? That is the end of our slide. Hindi na ito i-assignment ha, kasi binigay ko na ito. You have, hindi na ako magbibigay ng assignment for this. Questions so far? So I'll have a quiz for, sabi ko kahapon, magkuquiz ako ngayon. Kaya lang, chinek ko yung time, medyo bitin. So actually, bibigay ko yung quiz later sa laboratory. I will coordinate with Ma'am Charm for the group 2 na siya yung mag-a-administer sa quiz ko later sa inyo. That is just a short quiz, and ang coverage lang nun ay yung diniscuss ko kahapon. Hindi kasali yung diniscuss ko ngayon. Questions, everyone? Clarifications? Wala? Okay, so kung wala na, I think that's it for this morning. You can now attend your next class. See you later, Group 1, sa laboratory natin. Pwede na kayo mag-log out sa conference.